What if the most unkillable man in the Marvel Universe found himself thrown into a reality where there is only war? What if Wolverine's adamantium claws and healing factor met the endless horrors of Warhammer 40,000? What if a man who had lived for centuries, fighting for a better world, suddenly awakened in a future where hope itself was considered heresy? The transition hit Logan like a freight train made of broken glass and screaming metal. One moment he was in the danger room at Xavier's mansion, running through another combat simulation. The next, reality tore itself apart in colors that shouldn't exist, dragging him through a void that felt like drowning in frozen fire. When his consciousness finally reassembled itself, Logan found himself face down in mud that stank of chemicals and decay, rain hammering against his back with the consistency of warm oil. He pushed himself up, spitting foul-tasting earth from his mouth, and took stock of his surroundings through eyes that watered from the acrid air. The sky above was the color of a fresh bruise, purple-black clouds roiling with unnatural lightning. The landscape stretched in every direction like a nightmare, painted by someone who'd never seen beauty. Twisted spires of corroded metal jutted from ground that seemed to pulse with sick organic life. And in the distance, fires burned with flames that were the wrong colors entirely. Logan's healing factor was already working overtime, purging whatever toxins saturated the atmosphere. His nostrils flared as he cataloged scents: industrial waste, rotting meat, ozone, and something else. Something that made his animal instincts scream danger in a way he hadn't felt in decades. The familiar burn started in his knuckles as his claws slid free with their distinctive snikt. 6 blades of adamantium gleaming dully in the polluted half-light. "Where the hell am I?" he muttered. But the words felt inadequate for the sheer wrongness of this place. This wasn't just another planet or dimension. This felt like reality itself had been wounded and left to fester. The ground trembled. Logan's enhanced senses picked up the approach before his eyes confirmed that something massive was moving through the twisted landscape, crushing everything in its path. He dove behind a chunk of rusted machinery just as the thing emerged from the toxic mist. It stood 20 feet tall, a grotesque fusion of rotting flesh and corroded metal. What might have once been a man had been transformed into something obscene: pistons and cables woven through swollen, diseased tissue, a cannon grafted where an arm should be, and a face split open in a perpetual scream, revealing too many teeth in a mouth that dripped black ichor. The creature paused, a nose that had been split into multiple flaps sniffing the air. It turned toward Logan's hiding place with terrible purpose, and when it roared, the sound was like 1,000 voices screaming in agony simultaneously. Logan had fought demons, gods, and every kind of monster the Marvel Universe could throw at him, but nothing had ever radiated such concentrated wrongness. This wasn't just evil, it was corruption given form. Reality's rules bent until they broke. But Logan had never backed down from a fight, no matter how ugly. "All right, bub," he growled, rolling his shoulders as the creature charged. "Let's dance." What if Wolverine's centuries of combat experience meant nothing against an enemy that defied every law of nature he understood? The beast moved with hideous speed, its massive bulk somehow propelling forward faster than should be possible. Logan dove between its legs, claws raking through putrid flesh and corroded metal in a spray of black ichor that hissed and smoked where it hit the ground. The creature howled and spun, one massive fist catching Logan in the ribs with enough force to send him flying 20 feet into a crystalline tree structure that shattered on impact. Logan felt 3 ribs crack, felt one puncture his lung, felt the internal bleeding start, and felt it all heal within seconds as his mutant healing factor kicked into overdrive. He was on his feet before the creature could follow up, rolling under a massive stomp that would have turned him into paste. His claws found the thing's ankle, severing what looked like important cables and causing it to stumble. They traded blows in a brutal exchange that would have killed any normal man a dozen times over. The creature's toxic blood burned Logan's skin, but his healing factor worked constantly to repair the damage. Every wound Logan inflicted began to close almost as fast as his own, but not quite. He was faster, more precise, and centuries of experience fighting had taught him exactly where to cut to disable an opponent. The creature suddenly grabbed something in its own chest cavity, a pulsing organ that glowed with sickly green light, and crushed it. A cloud of spores exploded outward, engulfing Logan in a toxic mist that immediately started attacking him from the inside. His lungs burned, his healing factor struggling to counteract biological warfare on a cellular level. The creature used his moment of weakness to grab him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with crushing force. With the last of his strength, Logan drove both sets of claws up through the underside of the creature's jaw, piercing whatever served as its brain. It convulsed, grip loosening, and Logan tore himself free. As it collapsed, he methodically dismembered the abomination until it lay in twitching pieces, unable to regenerate from such comprehensive destruction. Logan fell to his knees, body purging the toxins with agonizing slowness. Through the chemical rain, he heard new sounds approaching, the synchronized march of boots, the mechanical hum of advanced weapons, human voices, speaking a language he somehow understood, despite never having heard it before. Sweep pattern Epsilon. The Auspex registered a Xenos kill. Emperor protect. Look at the remains. Nothing human could have done this. Logan melted into the twisted undergrowth, instincts screaming warnings. The newcomers wore full environmental suits and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. On their armor, a symbol Logan didn't recognize, a two-headed eagle clutching lightning bolts. They moved with military precision, securing the perimeter around the dismembered creature. Blood trail leads north, still fresh. The mutant cannot have gone far. What if Wolverine's greatest strength, his unkillable nature, became the very thing that made him a target in this nightmare future? Before Logan could decide whether to fight or run, sharp pain lanced through his back. He spun to find a slender figure in lighter armor, face mostly hidden by a hood, holding some kind of syringe gun. The figure had just injected him with something potent enough to affect even his metabolism. "Got you," the hooded figure whispered, triumph and fear mixing in their voice. Logan lunged, claws extended, but his limbs suddenly felt like lead. The tranquilizer was formulated specifically to overcome enhanced healing factors. As darkness closed in, he heard the hooded figure speak into a communicator. "This one's different. Not chaos, not Xenos, something else entirely. Bring the null cage." Logan collapsed, rough hands dragging him from the undergrowth. The last thing he heard was a commander's cold voice. "Secure the abhuman for transit. The Inquisition will want this specimen intact." When consciousness returned, Logan found himself suspended in a transparent cylinder filled with yellowish fluid that burned his lungs. Tubes and cables connected to his body, extracting samples of blood, tissue, and bone marrow with mechanical precision. Beyond the glass, robed figures moved with inhuman efficiency, adjusting ancient-looking monitoring equipment. Subject maintains extraordinary regenerative capabilities despite continued tissue extraction, droned a voice that was partly mechanical. Skeletal structure contains unidentified metallic alloy bonded at molecular level. Attempt 47 to extract sample unsuccessful. Logan strained against his restraints, but they held firm, crafted from materials his adamantium couldn't cut. His movement drew attention. A figure approached the cylinder, different from the robed technicians, taller, clad in midnight black armor emblazoned with silver insignia, with eyes that had witnessed atrocities beyond counting. "You are conscious," she stated, her voice devoid of inflection. "Good. I am Inquisitor Vale of the Ordo Xenos. Your cooperation will determine whether your end is swift or agonizing." A technician adjusted something, and the fluid level dropped enough for Logan to speak when the breathing mask retracted. "What have you done to me?" he rasped. "Curious. You speak Gothic with an accent I cannot place. Are you a lost human strain? A masterful Xenos infiltrator? Or something the warp has fashioned to test us?" "Name's Logan. I'm human, last I checked. Where am I? What year is this?" The Inquisitor's eyes narrowed. "You claim ignorance of the Imperium, of the God, Emperor who shields mankind from the horrors of the void? It is the 41st millennium, mutant, the time of ending." The words hit Logan like a physical blow. 41st millennium. Whatever had torn him from his reality had hurled him into a distant future, where humanity had spread across the stars, only to descend into something resembling medieval fanaticism armed with spacefaring technology. What if Logan realized that the future of humanity was somehow worse than anything he'd fought to prevent? Over the next hours or days, time was impossible to track in the laboratory. Logan learned about the Imperium of Man through interrogation and observation, a galaxy-spanning empire of 1,000,000 worlds, united by fanatical worship of a being called the God Emperor, who had sat upon a golden throne for 10,000 years. An empire constantly besieged by alien races, demonic entities from something called the Warp, and internal corruption that never seemed to end. The Inquisitor explained that his adamantium skeleton and healing factor marked him as either a valuable specimen or a dangerous mutant to be purged. The fact that he'd appeared through a warp storm made them suspect chaos corruption. They intended to study him thoroughly before execution, cutting him apart piece by piece to understand how his abilities worked, then rendering him down for the secrets his body might yield. Logan had been a lab rat before. Weapon X had done their best to break him, to turn him into their perfect killing machine. But these people made Weapon X look humanitarian by comparison. They spoke of him as a thing, not a person, and a human specimen whose suffering was irrelevant to the pursuit of knowledge that might serve the Emperor. Those claws, the Inquisitor continued, nodding toward his hands. Explain them. Adamantium, Logan replied, weighing his options. Indestructible alloy bonded to my skeleton. Whole package was an experiment I didn't volunteer for. For the first time, something resembling interest crossed her face. A weapons program. Your dimension created transhumans as well. Something like that. We called them mutants. Born different. Some saw us as evolution's next step. Others wanted us exterminated. Logan watched her carefully. Not so different from here, I'm guessing. The Inquisitor's lips curled in a mirthless smile. Perhaps our worlds are not so different after all. She turned to a robed figure. Magos. Prepare the specimen for transport to the black ships. If the metal cannot be removed, sever the limbs for separate study. Logan's muscles tensed. His healing factor had been working silently, adapting to the tranquilizers, strengthening against the restraints. That's not happening, he growled. What if the moment Wolverine broke free was the moment he truly understood the scale of horror he'd fallen into? With a roar of effort, he snapped the bonds securing his right arm. His claws extended, slicing through the cylinder wall before the technicians could react. Alarms blared as fluid gushed onto the laboratory floor. Guards rushed in wielding energy weapons, but Logan burst from the shattered cylinder, tubes and cables tearing free from his flesh wounds that sealed almost instantly. The first guard's shot caught Logan in the shoulder, and pain, unlike anything he'd experienced before, coursed through his body. The energy weapon disrupted his healing factor momentarily, but didn't stop him. Logan closed the distance in a blur, claws tearing through armor and flesh. He grabbed the dying guard as a shield, backing toward a doorway while keeping his eyes locked on the Inquisitor. She stood watching with clinical detachment, making no move to flee. Logan lunged for her, only to slam into an invisible barrier that flared blue on impact. The force field crackled against his adamantium claws, resisting even their molecular edge. Primitive, she commented. Did you think I would confront a potentially hostile life form without protection? More guards flooded in, these wearing ornate armor with skull-faced helmets. At their center walked a towering figure in midnight blue armor, adorned with purity seals and scripture. In his hands he carried a staff topped with a symbol of an open book surrounded by flame. Librarian Cassius, the Inquisitor acknowledged with a slight nod. Your presence is unexpected. The seer detected a disturbance. The giant replied, his voice resonating with unnatural power. This creature reeks of warp taint, yet contains it like a vessel. Fascinating. Logan felt pressure building inside his skull as the one called Cassius stared at him. The giant was trying to invade his mind, to control him through psychic ability. But Logan had faced telepaths before, had trained with Charles Xavier, had built mental defenses that had withstood even the most powerful psychic assaults. Get out of my head, Logan snarled, focusing his thoughts into a mental spear that thrust outward against the intrusion. The librarian flinched, surprise briefly crossing his features. It resists, untrained, yet possessing natural shields against psychic intrusion. What if Wolverine's escape led him not to freedom, but to an even greater understanding of how lost this future truly was. Logan fought his way through the facility, his enhanced senses guiding him toward fresher air and potential exits. He burst into a massive hangar where cargo was being loaded onto hovering transports. Beyond the partially open hangar door, he glimpsed Star's freedom, but the door was closing. Logan vaulted over crates and machinery, diving through the narrowing gap to tumble onto a landing platform suspended thousands of feet above the planet's surface. The platform connected to a sprawling complex built into a mountain. Far below, lights of a city stretched to the horizon, Gothic spires and cathedrals dedicated to the god these humans worshipped. The librarian and a squad of soldiers emerged onto the platform, weapons trained. The Abhuman possesses remarkable tactical acumen, the giant observed. Most impressive. But what hope do you have against a servant of the god? Emperor. Logan backed toward the edge. I've had practice escaping government facilities. Happens when everyone wants to turn you into a weapon. You believe we wish to weaponize you. How limiting. The Imperium seeks to understand you. Knowledge is the first step toward purity. Save it, Logan snapped. I saw your labs. Your idea of understanding involves dissection. The librarian raised his staff, and psychic energy crackled around him. I propose an alternative. Serve the Imperium willingly. Put your abilities to use defending humanity against Xenos and the great enemy. Prove your loyalty, and you may yet find purpose in this millennium. For a moment, Logan hesitated. He was alone in a strange universe, outnumbered, with no clear way home. Maybe cooperation was the smart play, at least temporarily. Then he remembered the prisoners he'd seen in cells as he escaped, remembered their fear and desperation, remembered the clinical cruelty in the Inquisitor's eyes as she discussed dismembering him. This Imperium was built on fear, oppression, and fanaticism. It was everything he'd fought against across multiple lifetimes. I already have a purpose, Logan replied, extending his claws. It's what I'm best at. What if Wolverine's refusal to serve led to a battle that would determine not just his fate, but reveal the true horror of the 41st millennium? Logan launched himself at the librarian in a berserker charge. Soldiers opened fire, shots striking his flesh but failing to stop his advance. The librarian unleashed a bolt of psychic energy that struck Logan squarely in the chest pain, exploding through his nervous system as the attack bypassed physical durability to target his mind directly. Logan stumbled but pushed through, his mental shields absorbing the worst of the assault. He closed the distance, claws slashing toward the giant's throat. The librarian parried with inhuman speed, his staff intercepting Logan's strike. The adamantium claws bit into the weapon, but couldn't shear through it completely. Surprise crossed the giant's features. His supposedly inviolable force weapon had been damaged. Impossible, he breathed, before driving his armored fist into Logan's sternum. The blow lifted Logan off his feet and sent him flying backward toward the platform's edge. He crashed through a safety railing and plummeted into open air, the city's lights spinning below him. Wind roared in his ears as he fell. His healing factor was extraordinary, but even he had limits. If the impact pulverized too much of his body at once, he might not recover. As the ground rushed up, Logan caught sight of a passing cargo hauler straining under industrial materials. He reached out, claws extended, and snagged the hull's edge. Metal screamed as his adamantium carved furrows through the side, slowing his descent. The sudden deceleration nearly tore his arms from their sockets, but his adamantium skeleton held. Logan pulled himself onto the hauler's upper hull as it continued its pre-programmed flight deeper into the city. From his vantage point, he finally saw the true scale of this metropolis, a nightmarish fusion of Gothic cathedral and industrial hellscape. Enormous factories belched toxic fumes. Massive statues of armored figures stood sentinel over squares where thousands knelt in prayer. Everywhere, imagery of the two-headed eagle and an emaciated figure upon a golden throne. The hauler descended toward an industrial complex. Logan leaped off moments before it passed through a security checkpoint, landing in shadows near a waste processing plant. He slipped through the darkness, avoiding searchlights, until he found a lone worker heading down a side street. Nothing personal, bub, Logan whispered, rendering the man unconscious with a precisely measured blow. He stripped the worker of his coveralls. They were tight across his shoulders, but would serve to conceal his identity. In the pockets, he found metal coins, an identification card, and a prayer pamphlet extolling self-sacrifice for the Emperor. What if Wolverine discovered that in this grim darkness of the far future, even hope had been twisted into a weapon of control? Logan moved through the industrial district with the confident stride of someone who belonged. Workers paid him little attention, their gazes downcast, movements mechanical. Many bore signs of industrial accidents, crude augmetic replacements where limbs had been lost, patches of artificially grown skin covering burns. He slipped into a crowded bar called the Martyr's Rest, settling into a shadowed corner booth. A flickering pict screen showed scenes of glorious battle, heavily armored soldiers gunning down grotesque aliens, while a narrator extolled their heroism in the Emperor's name. Logan ordered a drink that burned like acid going down, his healing factor neutralizing the toxins before they could affect him. He listened to conversations, building a picture of this world. Most talk centered on survival, rising costs of ration cubes, increased production quotas, public execution of a man who'd failed to meet tithe obligations. There were whispers, too, more guarded, of unrest in neighboring sectors, of a cult promising freedom from imperial oppression. Then Imperial troops pushed into the bar, led by the hooded figure who'd originally captured Logan. By order of the Holy Inquisition, this establishment is subject to immediate inspection. An escaped subhuman mutant has been sighted in this district. The penalty for harboring such a creature is death. Before Logan could move, the lights died. Emergency lumens activated, casting everything in bloody red. A new sound rose, a keening wail that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The pict screen dissolved into static, reforming into a symbol that caused visible terror, an 8-pointed star, surrounded by arcane runes. Chaos breach! The operative's voice cut through the rising panic. All civilians fall back. Security teams, containment protocol Theta. The walls shimmered unnaturally, and from the distortions stepped twisted shapes creatures, carrying the same corrupt presence Logan had sensed in the forest. Soldiers fell as shadows wrapped around them, and though the defenders fought hard, more entities kept pushing through the widening tear in reality. The hooded operative spotted Logan. What did you bring with you? This isn't on me, kid, Logan replied, claws sliding free as he rose. But they look a lot like the things I ran into earlier. A misshapen creature lunged at them. Logan tore it apart before it could reach either of them. The operative hesitated, then lowered their weapon slightly. These are daemons. If they followed you here, then whatever brought you into our world wasn't random. You saying someone planned this? Not someone, the operative corrected, firing at another creature. The dark powers always search for new champions. Your abilities make you a target. Well, they picked the wrong guy, Logan growled. The operative met his eyes. Then prove it. Help me push this breach back before the entire hive is lost. Name's Logan. Interrogator Mire Vex, Throne Agent. Let's move. Side by side, they cut through the invading horrors. Logan's claws severed creatures so completely their forms couldn't reform. Mireille's warded rounds burned with protective symbols, forcing the daemons to retreat. Outside, Imperial troops held a desperate defensive line as civilians sheltered behind barriers. Searchlights scanned the spreading corruption. Then, a towering armored figure stepped through the chaos. Crimson armor marked with grim trophies, an axe that radiated power, and a heavy tome clasped in its other hand. Mireille's expression tightened. A word-bearer sorcerer. This is far beyond anything we can face. Logan watched the giant carve through defenders like they were nothing. That the leader? Yes. If he falls, the breach may collapse. But his armor is strengthened by forces no normal weapon can break. Logan clicked his claws into place. Good thing these aren't normal. Before Mireille could stop him, Logan charged. The armored giant turned, swinging his axe in a sweeping arc, but Logan slipped beneath it and drove his claws into a joint in the armor. Metal shrieked as the blades found a weak point, and dark fluid spilled out. The giant staggered, thunderstruck. Impossible! Nothing mortal should be able to breach armor blessed by the powers. Logan spat blood. Keep telling yourself that, bub. The battle that followed was brutal and desperate. The Chaos Marine used both physical might and psychic sorcery, attempting to corrupt Logan's soul through invasive mind attacks. But Logan had faced telepaths, demonic possession, and every form of mental assault imaginable. His will, forged across centuries of trauma and triumph, proved unbreakable. When the Marine tried to tempt him with promises of power and a way home in exchange for service to the dark gods, Logan's response was simple and final. Been down this road before. Nobody owns me. With a roar that was more beast than man, Logan broke free of the psychic assault and drove his claws through gaps in the ancient armor, seeking vital organs. The Marine staggered, disbelief evident even through his grotesque helm, before collapsing. As he died, he pressed something into Logan's side, a small object that burned like a brand. "The Harbinger has arrived," the Marine wheezed. "The catalyst for the final corruption. My death changes nothing. You, Logan of Earth, will be his herald, willing or not." The Marine's corpse dissolved, returning to the warp. But the object he'd embedded in Logan's flesh remained a small, 8-pointed star that pulsed with unholy light, burrowing deeper despite his healing factor's attempts to expel it. What if Logan discovered that his victory had actually fulfilled the enemy's plan, marking him as something far more dangerous than even the Imperium suspected? The librarian Cassius arrived with Inquisitor Vale and reinforcements, finding Logan standing over the dissolved remains of the Chaos Marine. The demonic incursion was contained, but the librarian's attention fixed immediately on the warp token embedded in Logan's side. "Do not touch it," the Inquisitor warned, as Logan reached for it. "It is a warp token, a beacon for the forces of chaos. They have marked you." "Then cut it out," Logan growled. "It has bonded with your essence," the librarian replied gravely. "Remove it improperly, and it may tear your soul from your body, creating a new warp breach." Logan learned the full horror of his situation. The Wordbearers, a Chaos Legion dedicated to dark gods, believed he was prophesied to serve as a catalyst for the return of their Primarch, Lorgar, one of the Emperor's own sons, who had fallen to chaos 10,000 years ago. The warp token was not just a marker but an integration device, slowly merging with Logan's cellular structure, using his healing factor to anchor itself to his very genome. The Inquisitor offered a grim bargain: submit to Imperial custody and allow their specialists to attempt removal of the token through a dangerous psychic purging procedure called Protocol Terminus. In exchange, they would use the token's dimensional link to try sending him home. The alternative was death, or worse, becoming the gateway through which Lorgar would return to plague the galaxy. Logan had limited options. Alone in a hostile universe with a chaos beacon embedded in his flesh, he reluctantly agreed to their terms. "But I want your word," he said. "You focus on sending me home, not dissecting me for research." "A temporary alliance," the Inquisitor agreed coldly. "Nothing more." What if Protocol Terminus, a psychic procedure never successfully completed, required Wolverine to confront not just the chaos corruption, but the darkest aspects of his own soul? They transported Logan to an Inquisitorial facility, where specialists prepared for the ritual. The null chamber resembled an ancient torture device, fused with advanced technology. Arcane machinery hummed with contained energy, while runes of warding covered every surface. Logan stood at the chamber's center, stripped to the waist, the 8-pointed star having spread tendrils of corruption through surrounding flesh. His healing factor fought constantly, but the token adapted to each cellular defense. Librarian Cassius stood at the circle's head, force staff planted before him. Inquisitor Lord Hephaestia, a powerful psyker of the Ordo Malleus, took position opposite. Between them, Mireille prepared an injection of psychoactive compounds. "This will help you maintain consciousness during the procedure while suppressing autonomic functions," Mireille explained. "Without it, the shock would likely stop your heart." "Just get on with it," Logan replied. The needle pierced his skin, and immediately cold spread through his veins. The world took on a crystalline quality. Each sound and color intensified, yet somehow distant. "Step onto the platform," the Inquisitor Lord commanded. As Logan complied, the null field enveloped him. The token reacted violently, sending spasms of pain through his body. Around the chamber, masked psychers began chanting in perfect unison, their voices creating harmonics that vibrated through his bones. "Logan of Earth," the Inquisitor Lord intoned, her psychic voice overwhelming her physical one. "We will now enter your mindscape. You must guide us to the token's psychic anchor point." Logan closed his eyes, centering himself through meditation techniques learned over centuries. I'm ready. The psychic assault hit like a tidal wave. Logan found himself standing in a mental landscape of his own creation, a snow-covered forest representing his innermost sanctum, but veins of corruption spread through the pristine white drifts, pulsing with malevolent purpose. The Inquisitor Lord and Librarian materialized beside him. The token's influence has spread further than anticipated, the Librarian observed. These corruption lines follow pathways of memory and emotion. Logan pointed to where the lines converged. There. That's where it burns strongest. They pushed through the mental forest, encountering increasing resistance. The clearing, when they reached it, contained a grotesque tree formed from twisted flesh and metal. Embedded in its trunk was the eight-pointed star, larger in this representation, pulsing with unholy light. The anchor, the Inquisitor Lord confirmed. And it has already begun transformation. This is a nascent daemon gateway. How do we destroy it? Logan demanded. Destruction is impossible, the Librarian replied. We must subvert its purpose instead. Redirect the dimensional link. The Inquisitor Lord stepped forward. Logan of Earth, you must focus your will on your home dimension. Visualize it with perfect clarity. Create a beacon for your essence to follow. Logan concentrated on images of Earth Xavier's mansion, the Canadian Rockies, streets he'd walked for centuries. As he focused, the mental landscape began to shift, briefly overlaid with those familiar places. Suddenly, the corrupted tree shuddered. From the ground rose a figure wearing Logan's own face, but twisted into a mask of bestial rage. The berserker embodiment of his uncontrolled fury, the animal within his soul. The token had awakened and empowered his darkest aspect. Your inner demon, the Librarian breathed. The token has weaponized your own darkness. The berserker charged with inhuman speed, bone claws extending larger and more savage than Logan's adamantium weapons. They collided in a flurry of slashing talons. You're not in control here, Logan growled as they grappled. Never have been, never will be. The gods have shown me the truth, the berserker snarled. Embrace the rage. Become the weapon you were always meant to be. Been there, Logan replied, driving his knee into the creature's midsection. Done that. Got the nightmares to prove it. What if defeating his inner darkness and severing the chaos connection required Logan to accept something he'd spent centuries denying, that rage and violence were part of who he was, but they didn't define him? While Logan battled his corrupted reflection, the Psykers worked to subvert the token's purpose. They spoke words in a language that burned the air, causing corruption lines to writhe in agony. The berserker sensed their work and broke from Logan, charging toward the Psykers. Logan tackled it from behind, claws sinking deep. Now, Logan, the Librarian shouted. Visualize your return. The path is opening. Logan maintained his grip while reaching toward memories of Earth. A portal began to form a swirling vortex, showing fleeting images of New York, the mansion, familiar faces. Logan felt powerful pull toward it. The berserker played its final card. They will follow, it hissed. The word-bearers know your scent now. Across dimensions, they will hunt. When Lorgar returns, your world will be the first to burn. Logan hesitated, the portal fluctuating. What do you mean? The token is not just a beacon, it's a map. Your return opens the way for invasion. It lies, the Inquisitor Lord's voice cut through. The token can create a one-way passage only. Your departure will sever the connection permanently. Don't listen, the Librarian urged. This is the token's final defense. Doubt will close the portal. For a moment, Logan saw the vision the berserker offered remaining in this universe. Accepting the token's power, becoming something transcendent, strong enough to challenge even Primarchs. Then he remembered who he was. Power always came with a price, invariably paid in innocent blood. Nice try, Logan snarled, plunging his claws into the berserker's chest. But I know a con when I hear one. The creature shrieked and dissolved. Logan turned to the portal. The Psykers had completed their ritual. The corrupted tree withered, the token dull and lifeless. The connection is redirected, the Inquisitor Lord confirmed. Step through and return to your dimension. The token will remain here, severed from your essence. Logan approached the portal, then turned back. What happens to this universe? To the Word-Bearers' plans? Without their catalyst, they must seek another path. the librarian replied. The Imperium stands vigilant, as it has for 10,000 years. Logan nodded, understanding that in this grim darkness, there were no final victories, only endless struggle. You fought well, Logan of Earth, the Inquisitor Lord said. Few mortals resist chaos so completely. I protect myself, Logan replied. Always have. He stepped into the vortex. Reality stretched and compressed as he traversed impossible distances between universes. Then, with a shock that drove breath from his lungs, he materialized in snow-covered forest, his forest, the Canadian Rockies. Logan fell to his knees, hands pressed to his side where the token had been. Only unmarked flesh remained. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with clean air, scented with pine and snow. As he rose, a faint metallic scent carried on the breeze. His claws extended reflexively. You can come out now, bub, he called. I know you're there. What if Logan's escape hadn't been escape at all, but release? A figure emerged, wearing ornate power armor that absorbed sunlight. Midnight blue ceramite bore golden trim and a familiar 8-pointed star. The helm resembled a snarling daemon, red eye lenses fixed on Logan. Logan of Earth, the figure intoned. The journey ends only to begin anew. How did you follow me? The armored giant chuckled. We did not follow. We proceeded. The warp exists beyond linear time, beyond dimensional boundaries. What you experienced was not random chance, but carefully orchestrated design. The word-bearers, Logan growled. You arranged everything, the storm, the token, all of it. A test, the figure confirmed, removing its helm to reveal features corrupted by warp influence. 1. You passed admirably. You resisted direct corruption, survived the Imperium's mercies, and redirected a warp token through sheer will. Few mortals could accomplish such feats. Logan circled warily. What do you want from me? Want? Nothing so crude. This was merely confirmation of prophecy. Your world has defenders, heroes, gods, and monsters. But it lacks true faith, true purpose. We bring illumination to the ignorant. Not interested, Logan snarled. The Marine smiled without warmth. Recruitment was never the goal. Observation, confirmation. The man of blades who cannot die, whose rage sustains him across centuries, whose very bones are marked with unbreakable metal. The prophecy speaks true. Logan's patience ended. He charged, claws leading. The Marine made no move to defend, allowing adamantium to pierce his breastplate. But instead of blood, black smoke poured from the wound, coalescing into demonic shapes. The Marine's form began dissolving. Your world has been marked, Logan. The Great Crusade comes to all realities in time. When you see the 8-pointed star in your sky, remember this moment. Remember, you were warned. The Chaos Marine vanished, leaving only disturbed snow and lingering ozone. Logan retracted his claws, scanning for threats but finding none. Had he truly escaped? Or been released? Had he thwarted their plans? Or advanced them? The Marine's words suggested a larger design extending beyond universes or timelines. Logan turned his gaze to the clear blue sky, unmarked by warp storms or battlecruisers. For now, his world remained as he'd left it. Whether the warning was truth or manipulation, the threat wouldn't materialize today. And when it did, if it did, Logan would be ready. He always was. What if the seed planted during Wolverine's journey to Warhammer 40,000 would one day grow into something that threatened his entire universe? What if the unkillable man who had faced the grim darkness of the far future and returned unbowed would be called upon again when the 8-pointed star finally appeared in Earth's sky? Logan headed west toward the setting sun, the Canadian wilderness embracing him like an old friend. Behind him, for the briefest moment, a shadow fell across the snow, shaped like an 8-pointed star. Then it was gone, the mountain wind erasing all evidence. But seeds once planted have a way of growing, even in the harshest soil. And prophecies once spoken echo across time itself, waiting for the moment of fulfillment. I'm the Wolverine, he growled to the empty forest. And I'm the best there is at what I do. The mountains offered no response. For now, there was only silence, clean air, and the familiar weight of adamantium in his bones. But Logan knew better than most that peace was always temporary. In the grim darkness of the far future, there was only war. But in the present, there was still hope, still heroes, still time. For now,